On this week's episode of Hockey Inside Out, even though he had a strong effort against the Ottawa Senators, Nick Suzuki, his production has fallen off. What has gone wrong with Suzuki of late? And also Owen Beck making his debut with the Montreal Canadiens. We'll get the reaction from the panel on what they thought was good and wrong from him, and could he be a foundation player going towards training camp next fall? And Anthony Beauvillier, he was a part of the Bo Horvat trade. Should the Habs have made a play on Beauvillier, given he's a local product and could have been here with the Montreal Canadiens? This plus the bonus questions on this week's episode of Hockey Inside Out. Welcome in to a new episode of Hockey Inside Out. I'm your host, Moe Khan, alongside me, Stu Cowan, Rick Green, and Andrew Berkshire. Gents, let's dive into it. Habs lose to the Senators on Tuesday. Nick Suzuki had a great game. However, you look at his body of work the last couple months here, has not been so great. You think about what he's done so far, guys. In the months of October and November, he had 24 points, was even. In the last 2 months, he's had 16 points. But the key stat that I found really surprising with Suzuki, in the first 2 months, he had 9 multi-point games. In the last 2 months, 3 multi-point games. What has gone wrong with Suzuki of late, and why is he not producing as he was early in the season?
Well, he's got 1 goal in the last 20 games, which is a little bit surprising. But, I mean, it's just a trickle-down effect of the injuries. I mean, they have 7 forwards on the injured list. He's averaging over 21 minutes of ice time per game. Some of that's on the power play. More of that has been shorthanded now since Jake Evans was injured. He's taking more face-offs that Jake Evans used to take. I think he's just being overused, but you can't really blame Marty St. Louis because he doesn't really have anybody else. They're running out of bodies there. But the thing with Suzuki, he's been having chances to score. They just haven't been going in. He had a couple of chances against Ottawa. The puck that Kirby Dach banged in from the crease, it was almost over the line from the shot with Suzuki. And Marty St. Louis after the game said too, he says, you can't look at Nick Suzuki under a microscope too much because you lose the big picture of what he brings. You know, he's a solid 200-foot player. They'd like to get more offense out of him. He doesn't have Cole Caulfield now on his wing either, which is obviously not going to help him. But Suzuki, you know, the compete level is always there. The defensive play is always there, not for a lack of effort. I think the All-Star break, even though he has to go to the game, the only Canadian player going there, I think the break will be really good for him, give him a chance to rest a little bit, recharge the batteries. It's good that the game is in Florida, so he'll get some sunshine there anyway, be able to relax a little bit and come back. I'm sure he'll come back stronger than what we've seen recently, but it was a good way for him to go into the break, picking up 2 assists against the Senators. And again, as Marty St. Louis said, I don't worry about Suzuki, and I don't think fans should worry about him too much either. There's so many players missing now. His line mates have been changing. He's got a bigger role. He's the only one of 3 guys on the team who have played every game this season, along with Dach. And I'm trying to remember who the third one is. But there's 3 of them. And last year, Suzuki was the only guy who played all 82 games. So it takes a toll, and I think we're seeing that this has taken a toll on him. And as I said, I think the rest will be good. It's actually Dvorak is the 3rd guy who's played every game this season.
Yeah, and like Stu says, he's getting chances. I mean, if you look, at this run where he's so-called struggling in racking up some points, he's getting some real good chances. Unlike the first part of the season where he could do no wrong. Everything that he was shooting was going in. It was, precision shots. They were going inside the post. And let's not forget, injuries, his line mates. He's played with different combinations that we saw what they were able to do when they're together and they complement each other with Caulfield, Dach. These kind of guys are huge pieces of the success of any player. But listen, he's a skilled guy. He knows what he needs to do. He's going to probably enjoy this nice little break that's coming up and recharge, and he's going to come back and do what he does best, and he'll find his way and not overly concerned about where he's at. Yeah, he's maybe struggling a little bit on the board, but he's still going to get chances, and he's going to make good of it, down the stretch.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. Honestly, he's the last guy that I'm concerned about on this roster. We know from watching Suzuki for several years now who he is, what he's capable of. I think it's understandable that some folks have been a little bit worried about him because like a little bit of the dynamism has been missing from his game, like his escapability with the puck, his stick handling hasn't been, showing up every game. And then you have this last game against the Ottawa Senators where all of a sudden Nick Suzuki looks like Nick Suzuki again. You're like, okay, so maybe There's a health issue where he's starting to feel a little bit better, and he can see the break on the other side of it, and he can extend himself a little bit more. All those minutes that he's playing, as Stu brought up, you have to pace yourself a little bit. And, no offense to the guys that are playing with him now, but it's a far different situation to be playing top-line matchup minutes with Cole Caulfield and Kirby Dach on your wings than Rem Pitlick and Josh Anderson. And aside from, just the defensive load that he has to carry, creating offense with those guys, I'm not exactly sure what Marty St. Louis was thinking with that line outside of he just doesn't have very many options right now. But like Rem Pitlick is all about speed and off the rush. Josh Anderson, same thing. Nick Suzuki likes to control the pace of play, and he can score off the rush, but he likes to take his own time with it. He's not a, afterburners on, go straight at the net type of guy. So he doesn't really fit with those two guys. And Josh Anderson is a guy who can, create his own offense because he's that bull in a china shop style player, but he doesn't necessarily work very well with his line mates in terms of creating in-zone plays off the cycle, off the forecheck, that kind of thing. So he doesn't really form great bonds with centers, whereas guys like Cole Caulfield do. And we saw in the last game, Raphael Harvey-Pinard really does. And there's some chemistry there. So I assume that's going to stick around, hopefully, for a stretch. It's almost bad timing to have the break right now. I want to see them play 5 or 6 games together. But, Josh Anderson, no disrespect to him, I think he's having a great scoring season, but 40% of his assists this season came in the third period against the Ottawa Senators. Yep. So he's not really a give-and-go style player, which is the kind of player that Nick Suzuki thrives with. So there's a lot going on behind the numbers of why the offense is struggling for Suzuki.
Well, Harvey-Pinard definitely gave that line a boost when Marty St. Louis put him with Suzuki and Anderson to start the second period against the Senators. And St. Louis was asked about it after the game, and he said, I just had a gut feeling. And he says, one of the pieces of advice I had when I took this job was go with your gut. And he did, and Harvey-Pinard responded. I mean, boy, this kid's 7th-round pick. Offensive skill when he gets a chance, but more importantly, he works his butt off, and he's not afraid to go to the dangerous areas in front of the net. 5 goals in 7 games. He has as many goals as Yoel Armia and Jonathan Drouin and Jake Evans combined this season, which is quite remarkable. Get back to Suzuki for a second. I mean, the minus 15 number, Rick knows all about plus minus from his early days in Washington. It's one of those stats that you have to take with a grain of salt. Like a lot of the analytics people don't like plus minus, but a lot of analytics stats you have to take with a grain of salt also. When you're the number one center on a team that's not very good and you're playing against the other team's top line every night, you're not going to have a very good plus minus. And get back to him having 1 goal in 20 games. Now that Caulfield's out, Suzuki's playing that spot where Caulfield was at the top of the faceoff circle. So he's going to get a lot more chances to score once the second half or once post All-Star game break starts. So I'm not worried about Suzuki. I think once he gets a goal on the power play or 1 or 2, I think it'll snowball a little bit and he'll get on a little bit of a run.
And let's not forget the last half of the season, there's a lot of teams that are gearing up for the playoffs. And things get a little bit tighter. Things are closer checked. Teams are much more aware of the opposition, big gunners, if you will, and they try and take those big guys away by making it real difficult for them and try to get the matchups to not allow them to have any success each and every night, because there's a lot of teams right now that are fighting for playoff positions, and they want to do that by shutting down some of the the offensive minded players, and Nick Suzuki being what he is, everybody's going to make it tough on him and try and keep him off the scoreboard.
Yeah, he's also missed a couple of practices recently, so he's nursing some kind of an injury. He'll never complain about it. It's remarkable that anybody can play all 82 games in an NHL season like Suzuki did last season and not miss a game this season. So again, that's just another reason why the All-Star break's really going to be good for him, just to give his body a little bit of rest. I don't think anybody's going to hit him in the All-Star game.
No, and to show just how important Nick Suzuki is in the minutes that he plays, Thomas Chabot totally dominated that game between the Canadiens and the Ottawa Senators. Right? He was everywhere. Against Suzuki, the Canadiens outchanced the Senators with Chabot on the ice 8-0. Without him, 8-2. Without him on the ice, 13-0 in favor of the Senators. So that's how strong Nick Suzuki was in that game.
Well, for Nick Suzuki, the All-Star break comes at a great time. And I think we all rather be in South Florida than the Montreal cold winter that we'll have this coming up weekend of minus 31. So perhaps that will recharge him and get ready for the final 31 games left on the regular season schedule for Nick Suzuki. And speaking of guys who played Owen Beck making his debut with the Montreal Canadiens over the weekend in Ottawa, where the Sens easily outclassed the Habs. You look at his play, he was -1. He played a little less than 10 minutes in that matchup. He was 1 for 3 in the faceoff draw. Gents, your thoughts on Owen Beck? How did he fare? Did what you liked and disliked? And could he be in this lineup come October of this fall?
You know, in all fairness, without judging right off the get-go here, you know, first game in, 14 shifts at the NHL level. You know, a good kid from my understanding. I thought he showed great poise. He's well liked. He's a good two-way player, I believe. He's going to get better. 18 years old. There's lots of future ahead of him, and he seems like a pretty level-headed young man that is excited, obviously, to have an opportunity to show what he can show. And a compliment to him too. When the World Junior, the Team Canada called him up and said, "We need you part of our team, for the gold." And he stepped in there, and that's a testament of the type of personality he is and the type of kid he is. So again, one of those moves that Ken Hughes strongly believes in, trying to find character guys and wants to be part of the Montreal Canadiens. And I think that the future looks bright for this young 18-year-old.
Yeah, it's really hard to step into the NHL at 18 years old and dominate, right? And we have to keep in context also that Owen Beck in the last essentially calendar month has played for the Mississauga Steelheads, Team Canada, now for Peterborough, and for the Montreal Canadiens. Like, that's a lot of change for a kid to get used to, and then to come in and have to play in the NHL. It's a big step from junior to the NHL. I thought he looked good. His line wasn't great overall in that game, but what I saw from him was very few mistakes, very few poor reads, and a lot of pro habits. He looked like a guy who might not be ready right this moment, but will be NHL ready way sooner than he should be for where he was drafted. That could mean next October. That could mean the October after that, but he'll be an NHLer very quickly.
Yeah, and it's interesting. He got the chance with Team Canada because of an injury to Kirby Dach's brother. That's who he called up to replace. But smart kid. He was the academic player of the year in the junior hockey last year in Canada. And after the Canadiens drafted him, Marty Lapointe said, he's smart off the ice. He's smart on the ice. He's got a good hockey IQ. We saw that. I mean, he almost made the team out of training camp this year. He had a really strong training camp. Did enough to impress the Canadiens that they signed them to a 3-year NHL entry-level deal, which is rare for a kid just being drafted and coming in to his first camp. A good face-off guy. He was the best face-off guy in the OHL last year. It'll be a little different in the NHL, going up against stronger and more experienced centermen. But it was just a great story. I think it was a great, getting a call in Peterborough on Friday night and saying, "Come to Ottawa, you're going to play for the NHL tomorrow." And there was interview on Hockey in Canada during the game with his parents who were in the stands, and his father was almost in tears, saying he was supposed to go for dinner Saturday night with Owen, and Owen called him Friday and said, "Dad, sorry, I have to cancel out on our dinner plans because I have to play my first game in the NHL." So, as a parent, you just imagine what that must feel like. So it was good for him to get a taste of what it's like in the NHL. I think it'll make him even hungrier going back to junior. But it wouldn't shock me if he's with the team next season. As I said, he almost made it this year. He's smart. He's a 200-foot player. He understands the game. He's the type of player that Marty St. Louis likes, right? A kid who's smart, sees the game, good hockey IQ. So if he's not with the Canadiens to start next season, I think he'll definitely be there the year after. But as you said, Andrew, he's going to be there quicker than what was expected when the Canadiens drafted him.
And I think it's always nice to see a young kid step in and that didn't seem to be intimidated by, and now I'm in the NHL and I'm going to do more watching than doing. So he handled himself quite well, and I thought his poise and his ability to do what he does best, to get involved and keep it simple and enjoy the experience. So great to see from that young man.
Yes, Marty St. Louis said he looked comfortable on the ice, especially for his first NHL game. You think of Yuri Slafkovsky, he didn't look very comfortable his first few games in the NHL, another 18-year-old kid. So, as I said, he's got that hockey IQ, and I think just that one-game experience is really going to go a long way. As Marty St. Louis said, he's going to go back to junior now. They hope he lights it up, sort of like Nick Suzuki did when he was sent back to junior after the Canadiens acquired him in the trade. But just another, they want to build this team around kids and those young guys who are smart hockey players. And as Marty St. Louis says, like everyday people, like just good guys. And he seems to fit into that mold of what the Canadiens are trying to bring into the locker room.
I want to bring up a quick point here, guys, with Owen Beck. Stu, you mentioned the idea that perhaps he could be a part of this team come training camp in the fall. Do you handle him with care, though, because you don't want to rush his development too quickly? Because we've seen guys, Slavkovsky being example A, Kotkaniemi being example B. You look at Galchenyuk being example C, and others who've come up at the age of 18, 19, 20, not really flourished with this franchise in their rookie season.
Well, a much bigger adjustment for Slavkovsky, coming from the bigger rink in Europe to the smaller rink here, a new culture, a new language, even though his English is excellent, but just a big, like a real change in life on and off the ice for Slavkovsky, whereas Owen Beck is a Canadian kid, played in the junior hockey, is used to playing a pretty heavy schedule with a lot of travel in between on buses too in junior. So I think it's an easier transition for him to the NHL than it has been for Slavkovsky, both on and off the ice. So I think that comes into play, and they're not going to rush guys. I mean, I still don't understand why they didn't send Slavkovsky to the World Junior Championship. I mentioned that before on this, and I know Serge Savard did an interview this week, and he said they made a huge mistake with Slavkovsky by keeping him here this long. They had their reasons for doing it. Obviously, they think it was the best for his development, keeping him in the NHL. But with Owen Beck, they won't rush him. But as I said, he almost made the team this year. So with another year under his belt, the World Junior experience, he's going to go through the OHL playoffs. He's with a good team now in Peterborough. By the time training camp starts next season, he's going to be hungry. I mean, he got that taste. He got to see what it's like to be in an NHL locker room. On his way from Peterborough to Ottawa, Nick Suzuki texted him and said, we're going to wait for you to get here. We're going to go out for dinner. And it was Suzuki and 5 other teammates took him out for dinner. You just imagine an 18-year-old kid sitting in, I'm sure it was a very nice restaurant in Ottawa, but I'm sure he didn't have to pay the bill, just sitting there going, wow, I'm actually made it here in the NHL, and then with his parents in the stands the next night. So that's going to just feed and give him even more hunger to be ready next season when training camp starts.
And time will tell. He'll be given the opportunity. They like him. They think that he's got a great future, so they're going to give him every chance to show what he can show. Then it's entirely up to him how he handles himself and how quickly he progresses.
And even if he is NHL ready next season, he isn't going to be forced into the NHL because the Canadiens do have more depth at center than they've had in recent seasons, right? It's not like a Victor Mete situation where he makes the club because they barely have 6 defensemen to scrape together, and he had a decent camp, but probably shouldn't have made the NHL at 18. Going into next season, barring a trade, they have Suzuki, Doc, Christian Dvorak, and Jake Evans healthy. It's a semi-decent, non-competitive 1 through 4 at center. So Owen Beck will have to force his way into the lineup more than just making it by default.
Yeah, not only did
to wrap it up here,
the top number 1 defense pairing to start the season was Shea Weber. I mean, it wasn't that's a perfect example of really rushing a kid.
Well, to wrap it up here, the classic term "next man up." Could Owen Beck be the next man up for that spine of the forward attack and perhaps supplant Jake Evans or someone else with the center position moving forward? We'll find out. He got a taste of it in Ottawa. Will he be with the team come October? Only time will tell. We'll find out soon. Well, this week we saw the big Bo Horvat trade to the New York Islanders that included Anthony Beauvillier. He's a local kid, guys, and there's been whispers that could have gone after him in years past. He has 18 months left on his current deal right now at $4.1 million as we speak. Gents, should the Habs make a play on Beauvillier now or wait maybe till next spring to make a play for him if he's not signed by the Canucks?
Yeah, I don't think it makes much sense to go for a trade right now. I really like Anthony Beauvillier. I think he's an underrated player, but the New York Islanders are clearly trying to load up to make a playoff run here, which is a choice, but understandable considering how well Sorokin is playing and how old that team's core is. But I don't know what the Canadiens could offer to get a player like Beauvillier. I think he's the main piece in that Bo Horvat trade, even though there is a first-round pick in there. It's a protected first-round pick, which is crazy to think that Bo Horvat couldn't get an unprotected first-round pick from a team that wants to make the playoffs, but Ben Sherratt did last year. That's absolutely wild.
Connor Bedard draft.
Exactly, right? It just real crazy, the different weights of players that GMs seem to have, but Beauvillier is a main piece in that trade. Like, would they get Beauvillier for a Sean Monahan rental? I don't think so. I think that'd be dreaming very high. You'd have to retain more than what's legally allowed on the salary cap to make that happen. But it makes sense to go after him when the team is looking to turn the corner, maybe. But at this stage right now, I don't think a trade would make sense. Just doesn't really pop for either team.
No, even if the Canadiens were interested, who are they going to? I mean, the Islanders are going to want Nick Suzuki, right? And they got Bo Horvat, who got 31 goals. They're not going to, it's not going to be Sean Monahan, or the Habs couldn't even get into that.
No.
What are they going to offer? I mean, there's nothing. Whatever the Islanders would want from the Canadiens aren't going to give up. And so I don't even think like Kent Hughes even bothered making a call, or maybe he did just to do his job and sort of just weigh things out. But I'm sure the Islanders' response was, well, we want Suzuki and probably something else because this is Bo Horvat's a goal scorer at 31 goals, and the Islanders are struggling offensively. That's one of their problems. So I don't think the Canadiens could have even been in that picture if they wanted to.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I don't think they were even in the works with any conversation. I think they're going to just stick to the status quo. Let things fall into place. Let the phone start ringing so that they can, so Ken Hughes can do what he likes to do and find some players that fit into his plan. And I think that. It's safe to say that he's going to stick to what he said back before, that this is my plan. We have to show patience and give me some time to bring the players in that I think will work with our organization.
Well, as you said, Andrew, Beauvillier can be an underrated player. He's got 9 goals this season, though. So it's, what are your, it was one of those things. Horvat also isn't signed beyond this season, so the Islanders are taking a risk if they can re-sign him or not re-sign him. And I heard some talk yesterday, if it looks like the Islanders aren't going to make the playoffs by the time the trade deadline comes around, and they can't sign Horvat, don't be surprised if he gets traded again.
Well, here's the thing to look at here. For the value that the Canucks got from Bo Horvat, could Kent Hughes extract that? Now, I'm not saying that level of value, but for whoever might be dealt from here until the deadline in early March, that he can get great value for whoever might be shipped off by the Montreal Canadiens in the next few weeks.
He should be able to, because frankly, the return for Bo Horvat, in my opinion, was underwhelming. You go back to last season, and Bo Horvat is one of the best goal scorers in the NHL right now. Is it sustainable for the rest of his career? Probably not. This is the prime of his career, but this is a guy who's a captain of a team. He is a great leader, good two-way player, an absolute weapon on the power play, plays center, wins faceoffs. Like he's a really complete player. On a decent contract number, yeah, he's an unrestricted free agent coming up, but you can negotiate, right? You have time. This is a guy who you can add as a core piece. He's not just a rental. So to see him go for a middle six guy like Beauvillier, a protected first-round pick, and a couple other small pieces, it is a bit shocking. And the fact that Vancouver didn't really shop him around. I've heard from a few people now that there were better offers on the table for Bo Horvat. They just wanted to make this deal with Long Island. So either the Vancouver Canucks really like Beauvillier, or they just aren't a very competent organization. And you see the value extracted by Kent Hughes last year in the Toffoli trade, Lehkonen. You look at the Sherratt trade. You hear the rumors going around from insiders about what teams are willing to offer for Joel Edmondson. There's going to be some serious value coming into the Montreal Canadiens at the trade deadline.
The thing I heard, apparently Horvat, the team's interested in him, but they wanted to be able to talk with Horvat to see if they could re-sign him before pulling off the trade, and the Canucks wouldn't let them, which is really surprising. But he was going into the trade deal. Like everything that could go wrong is going wrong now. Sean Monahan, who they were hoping to get a first-round pick, he played. He was injured, then he came back. He practiced a little bit. Now we haven't heard anything. We've been asking for updates daily from the Canadiens on what's going on with him. We haven't heard anything, which isn't good news. It looks like the Canadiens made a huge mistake allowing him to play while he had that looked like a broken foot, wearing that plastic cast, taking the cast off, playing, and putting the cast back on. Joel Edmondson's hurt now. Jonathan Drouin's hurt now. All the guys that they were sort of hoping to ship out at the end of the trade deadline, and Edmondson maybe get a first, maybe get a second. Monahan the same. Drouin, try and get something for him. They're all hurt, and now that's going to be a big blow to the Canadiens' rebuilding plans moving forward if they can't get anything for these guys at the trade deadline this year.
I find it really interesting that they trade a player like Beauvillier with the gamble that Bo Horvat maybe doesn't want to play in New York, maybe doesn't want to be part of the Islanders. Big time trouble if all of a sudden he walks at the end of the year say, no, I got a better deal somewhere else. I don't want to be part of the Islanders. And, they're left there kind of holding the bag. So always found that part of the gamble, one that sometimes plays out in your favor, but it's definitely a gamble.
Well, maybe the reason they made the trade so early, as I mentioned earlier, is because if they realize they can't sign him and he doesn't give them that boost that gets him into a playoff spot, they'll trade him again.
How awesome would that be if Bo Horvat go back to Vancouver after the season?
I don't think that's going to happen.
I think that relationship is strained enough. I will say the Canadiens are probably pretty happy about this trade, right? Because it pushes the Islanders into more stiff competition with the Florida Panthers in that jockeying for position in the wild card spots. So with losing those 2 games against Ottawa's now 3 points behind the Florida Panthers with 2 games in hand. Another couple wins, another spot down for the Florida Panthers.
Well, for the Montreal Canadiens, they don't acquire Anthony Beauvillier. They do have 2 first-round picks. Maybe that Florida pick might be flipped down the road. Who knows? We'll find out. And maybe Beauvillier, might be a Hab in 18 months' time from now when that talk of him being UFA will be discussed at that point. Well, that'll do for this episode of Hockey Inside Out. Don't forget to like and subscribe our YouTube page. Sign up to the newsletter on MontrealGazette.com/newsletters. And for full episodes and for bonus content, head on by Hockey Inside Out. And also submit your questions and comments. We look forward to conversing about that on future episodes of this show. On behalf of Andrew, Stu, and Rick, I wish you a great week. Stay warm. Bye for now.